And I pulled out the contract and I read it and I reread it and I went, oh, fuck, I don't own the company anymore.
Wow.
And I just went into this massive depression.
I met today's guest about 4 or 5 years ago at Camp Maverick. If that sounds familiar, it's probably because you heard the episode with Yannick Silver, the owner and founder of Maverick 1000, who also hosts the event Camp Maverick. Today's guest is Brian Smith, and he's the founder of the UGG Company, which has produced the world's most recognizable boot, the UGG boot. I'm sure you have seen it a dozen times. Brian is also a master storyteller and the author of The Birth of a Brand. You can get the link for that in the show notes below. Ladies and gentlemen, get comfortable because this is one of the best business stories I've ever had the pleasure of hearing. There are so many ups and downs. It's definitely going to make your head spin. It is my pleasure to bring on Brian Smith to the show. Let's get started. Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Hierarchy of Needs podcast. My name is Tim Palladino, and this is the show for entrepreneurs who want a higher value life and business. Brian, thank you so much for being here. It looks like wherever you are, it is very sunny.
California, we're in the middle of a haze right now, but the temperature's great, so can't complain.
Very cool. Very cool. It's an honor to have you here. It was an honor to meet you a few years ago at Camp Maverick, produced by,
that was a great event. Yeah,
man, it was literally a life-changing event because after I had met with you and I met with all those entrepreneurs and it really put a lot of things in perspective, I sold my business months after. As we were just talking about, I took all that I learned and I put it into practice immediately and went right home and said, this business isn't for me, offered it to, And then there it was sold, it was gone. And I started all over again.
Yeah. So that's not an easy thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It was exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
Situation.
So speaking of starting, right? Tell us about the genesis and the starting of Uggs.
Sure. Well, let's go back 42 years ago now to Perth, Australia. I had just spent 10 years studying to graduate as an accountant, and I hated accounting, but I didn't want to give up. So I quit the day I graduated.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I spent a few weeks trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I was driving home one day and I heard this song come on the radio and I missed from my house. I went straight to the record store and bought it because the words of this song was Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, yeah.
And the words of the second song was, tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young and life is long and there is time to kill today. And, here I was with no idea what I'm going to do. And then it said, and then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. And man, my body just got covered in goosebumps. And I went, shit, you're right, And so I started yoga back then. And that had sort of led to meditating. And I remember about a week later, I was meditating one morning and I'm trying to think, what am I going to do? And I got these goosebumps again. And I thought, all the big trends in Australia are coming out of California, like Levi jeans and waterbeds and, surf brands and skate brands and stuff. And I said, I'm going to go to California. I'm going to find the next big thing to bring back to Australia. Right. And so literally within 2 weeks, I landed in LAX. I had my surfboard in one hand and my suitcase in the other. And I rented a little house in Santa Monica, and the first thing I did was go straight up to Malibu, which is about 20 miles away, and surf, because I'd read these magazines all my life and was just dreaming to go surf Malibu. So I did that for a month or two and met a ton of people, but didn't find the next big thing. And so I kept hanging out and looking all the time. And about 2 months later, it was about September, October, and the wind was getting, chilly and the water was cooling off. And I remember finishing up a surf and I was with my buddy, and I was pulling on my sheepskin boots that I'd brought from Australia. And I just got this massive dose of goosebumps again. And I went, oh shit, there's no Ugg boots in America. And 1 in 2 Australians had some sort of sheepskin footwear.
Yeah.
So I looked at my buddy Doug and I said, Doug, let's go into business together, man. We're going to be instant millionaires. Every entrepreneur has that aha moment, and they see no obstacles, and it's just like, I see the goal, I'm going for it. And so we got back to my house and we did some research on manufacturers in Australia, and we called up one in Western Australia called Country Leather, a guy called George Bircher, and we convinced him we'd be great distributors for him in America. And so we had to, find $500 between us and send it down there, and we ordered 6 pairs of samples. And, they arrived, and Doug was going to be the salesman. I was an accountant. I was terrified of sales. So he went out on the road, and he came back about, 3 weeks later, and he had about 150 business cards of every shoe retailer and not a single order. And he says, Brian, they tell me we're crazy trying to sell sheepskin in California. And I knew logically that's a pretty, reasonable statement, but Australia's climate's identical to California. And so I knew that wasn't the reason. And so as an entrepreneur, when you hit a wall, you got a choice. You give up and walk away, or you figure out a way around or over or under it. And so we started thinking laterally, and I thought, well, how come all my friends at Malibu think this is going to be the best idea? And it struck us that all the California surfers who'd been down to Australia had come back with a half a dozen pairs of boots for their buddies. And so in the surf community, it was really well known. And so Doug and I said, okay, well, let's go down to the surf shop. So this time he made me go on the road as well. So I started off in Malibu and started working my way down the coast. So the first guy I walked into was Con Surfboards, and I had my little bag of sheepskin boots, and I was terrified. I was embarrassed and terrified, and I sort of walked in and I asked for the owner, and I opened up my little bag, and he goes, oh man, Ugg boots, they're fantastic. I got a pair. What are you doing with those? I said, well, I'm thinking of importing them into America. Oh my God, you're going to make a fortune. All my friends love them, and I thought, whoa, shit, this selling isn't so hard, So went to the next store, opened up my bag. Oh, sheepskin boots, man. Yeah, I don't own them, but all my friends have got them. They rave about them. You're going to make a fortune. And this happened all the way down the coast, all the way down to the Mexican border. And Doug was doing the same inland in the valley, and we met up and we realized that we're going to be like instant millionaires, but we never stopped to think that we didn't ask for an order, right? We didn't have any inventory. So, what was the point, But we knew we were on fire. So we, we needed capital. And that saying that once you start out on a path, the universe will conspire to work with you.
Sure.
Okay, it's thousands and thousands of years old, that saying. And I was talking to Doug about how we needed capital. My roommate overheard us, and he said, hey, there's some guys at my office who are looking for investments. Let me tell him. And so just like that, without a business plan or, anything to show, we raised 20 grand, which in today's money is about 75 grand,
Yeah.
And we sent 15 down to Australia and ordered 500 pairs of boots, and kept the other 5,000 for a little bit of advertising in the surf magazines. Yeah. And, the boots arrived now at the end of November. And so we put them all in the third bedroom of my house in Santa Monica, which is now the international headquarters of UGG,
Nice.
And so we filled up our cars and big, huge duffel bags full of product. And we both went back on the road again. So I went back to Con Surfboards, and I opened up this huge bag, and I said, okay, Jim, how many pairs do you want? And he goes, oh, Brian, well done, man. But, we couldn't sell them in our store. They're way too expensive. And we just sell surfboards and trunks and flip-flops.
Oh, wow.
But don't worry, you're going to do great in the shoe stores, And I just went, oh, shit. And I walked to the next store. Hey, Brian, well done, man. But we just sell surfboards and bikinis and trunks. They're way too expensive for us. You're going to kill it in the shoe stores. And this happened all the way down the coast, to Mexico. Took about a week, and we regrouped back in my house, and we tallied up the orders for the first year's sales of Uggs, and it was 29 pairs.
Oh,
it just happened to be exactly $1,000, and that was sort of depressing. But in retrospect, I got a different view of that. And that's when, years later, after I'd sold the company, I wrote a story about the whole process. It's called The Birth of a Brand. And it basically tracks from the aha conception all the way through to the sale of UGG. It's a brilliant book. It is not just a sales book or a business book or anything. It's a book about life and being an entrepreneur and being taken from the highs of the inspiration to the desperate lows of like 29 pairs. But the theme of it is that doesn't matter whether it's you look at the Wall Street Journal, right, and all the companies there, they all started with $1,000 sales, right? Yeah. And the theme of the book is that you can't give birth to adults, right? Everything starts with conception, the idea, and then the first, birth. The first, like buying 6 pairs was the birth of UGG, right? That was the first action. And then every business just lies there, and it lies there, and you got to keep feeding it, and changing the diapers, and it just seems like it's never going to work. But then eventually it'll start toddling, and that's for a business. When people are writing articles about you in the magazines and newspapers, and the first true believers are getting product and telling their friends, and that's a really, really cool stage. But that quickly goes into the youth stage, where you've got consistent orders coming in, and the accounting and shipping is working, the warehouse is great, and Salesforce is on board, and you can run a business, up to $20 million in that youth phase. Yeah. But if it's a really great service or a product like UGG was, it'll hit the teenage years. And do you recall when you're a teenager at school, you wanted to be at every party in town on a Saturday, right? It's the same in business. You want to be in every major trade show, and you want to be in all the mass retailers, and it can absolutely kill you so fast if you're not careful. And I almost lost UGG a couple of times during that phase because everybody wanted it, and you have to really scale back and see what you can control. And then it becomes a mature company, and you can grow at a much better pace. But that was a really, really interesting period for me. And, that's what led to that book, You Can't Give Birth to Adults.
It makes so much sense too. And it's I've been in that situation too.
Yeah,
where
I'm sure when you sold your last company and then tried to figure out getting the podcast going, I bet you went through the same phase.
Oh yeah. There's nights and sometimes days where I just stare at the ceiling, and it's like, and I'm like, all right, something happened. Something happened. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. And luckily something always does happen. It's all it takes is a little bit of faith in yourself. And
if you let me just carry on with that philosophy that the universe conspires,
Sure.
To make you understand how that works, and your listeners can understand how that works. When's the last time you saw an advertisement for a refrigerator? Right?
Oof, I don't
Probably
know.
can't remember, right?
Yeah.
If you needed one this Saturday, you would start seeing refrigerators. You'd be at Starbucks, and the classified ads on the newspaper would be on open at new refrigerators. You'd be driving down the street and look in a window, and there's refrigerators, right? And so what that philosophy means is that until you start out on a path, you're never going to see the signs.
Yeah.
Right? But the minute you start with a purpose, it doesn't matter what that purpose is. The minute you start on the purpose, I see that could work for my business. And oh my God, look at that over there. That I could probably use. There's somebody who is doing it similar. I could use, and so suddenly all of the universe, which has already been the universe is perfect. Everything you could possibly want already exists.
Yeah.
But until you start on a path, you're never going to see the evidence of that. And the minute you do start on a path, it's going to overwhelm you with how many possibilities there are. So I hope that sort of explains it a bit better.
It does perfectly too, because I noticed that even with myself, like I think as humans, we're designed to, when we desire, we can acquire. Like there's something in us innately that sets, once we agree to the path, right? Once we give ourselves permission to walk down a road, we will find the right path.
Yeah, and I won't go into it deeply, but it's energy. The energy you put out has a corresponding energy of stuff that's trying to get to you, and so you're exactly on the right track.
Yeah, it's and that's part of the fun. Once I overcame the fear of starting, it totally opened up a whole new world to what is possible.
Yeah, the greatest fear is that never happens. Right. If you get over that fear and just do it, shit, before you know it, you're on a whole, new roller coaster. It's great. Yeah.
And I think I say it's funny, but like a lot of what we are afraid of is kind of nonsense. Like if someone else tells us out loud the things that we're thinking, it would sound crazy. It would sound absolutely crazy. So in other words, find a friend that's able to repeat back to you. Let you know how crazy you sound sometimes. So when going up and down the coast, did you always have absolute faith in the inevitability of UGG becoming what it is? Yeah.
The product itself was so good that everybody who put a pair on goes, oh my God, man, these are so comfortable, right? So I knew from Australia that 1 in 2 Australians own some sort of footwear. That's when it just kept getting desperate all the time. That was really what drove me on. But, I after we had that 29 pair, year, which was like 3 weeks, right? But that was December 31 is like a season to us, right?
Yeah.
And so I was faced with, shit, what do I do? Doug went and got another job. We certainly couldn't pay a salary. And I wanted to give up, but I couldn't because I had like 480 pairs in the warehouse, right? All my investors' money. So I started doing swap meets and street fairs. And the best thing I did was I had a Dodge van, and I loaded the back up full of product and all the sizes and colors and everything. And I'd go surfing at Malibu like early in the morning, and by 9 o'clock, I've got the back door of the vans open and I'm open for business. And I started to develop this incredible retail trade out of the back of my van. And, that first January, February, March, before it got warm, I sold about $4,000 or $5,000 worth of product.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And then, the summer came, I had to get a job. I think I was scraping boats at Marina del Rey for like 6 months, right? And so the next season I said, okay, I'm going to advertise. So I hired this model and 2 models, a guy and a girl, and we posed them at the beach at Windansea in La Jolla, and, the perfect clothing and perfect hair and the perfect sunset and the waves behind, and I ran those ads in October, November, December, and the sales went to about 10,000, and I was so disappointed. And so the next summer job was construction worker in Bel Air, right? So, come September, I said, okay, I'm going to get a better looking models and a more expensive photographer. We went back to Windansea again, the same posing, perfect hair and everything. And we ran those ads in October, November, December, and the sales went to like 20,000. And I was just so disappointed to the point where I really wanted to give up. I think that next summer I was a greenskeeper at a golf course, working maintenance on all of the, fabulous job, by the way. But that was through that summer, I decided, okay, by October, I'm going to just sell off the rest of the inventory and get out of business. And the first storm hit the coast, which is about October when the wind switches to the north and big storms come through.
Okay.
And I remember getting home from the golf course and soaking wet, And I put on my answering machine, and there's like 20 messages from all these retailers going, Brian, I need Ugg boots, man. Everybody's coming into our store today. They want Ugg boots, you know. And like one after the other was the same thing. And I said, oh, shit, I can't even get out of business, right?
That's funny.
So I ended up, I had a lot of products. So I ended up, that most of them drove down to where I live to pick up the product because I didn't want to wait for UPS and everything. And so, that's when I realized, okay, I'm going to have to give it another shot this winter. And I got more product ordered from Australia. And before I ran the ads, I thought, I'm going to sort of check things out with my buddy who owns South Coast Surf Shop, one of my local guys. And I was in his store and I said, I don't know, okay, how to advertise. I don't know, nothing's, clicking. And he just said, oh, shut up, Brian. And he calls out back to all these little 12, 13-year-old grommets, hanging out there. He says, what do you guys think of UGG? And every one of them, oh, man, those Uggs, they're so fake. Have you seen those advertisements? Those models, they can't surf. And like instantly I went,
oh, that makes so much sense.
Shit, I'm sending the wrong message to my target market, And I felt foolish at how stupid those ads were. And so I lateral thinking again, when you're an entrepreneur, I called up a buddy who was running this Scholastic Surf championship out of Orange County. And I said, Pete, do you have any young kids who are going to turn pro soon? Because, I got no money, but I can pay them in Ugg boots,
Yeah.
And so he gave me these young guys, Mike Parsons and Ted Robinson. And so I arranged to meet them. And we instead of the posing on this, rock, we went to Trestles Surf, which is in San Onofre, and Black's Beach in La Jolla. And I just photographed them on the way, with my little brownie,
35
camera.
millimeter.
Yeah. And it was just casual. So there were no surf shots or anything. But I picked one where we were walking back from Trestles, and these are mile-long walks, and the surf's fantastic. And all the kids who read Surfer magazine would die to be at that beach. But I figured that, okay, well, I ran the ads with Mike and Ted, and that season the sales went to $220,000.
Oh, wow.
Why?
So this is the end of year 3?
End of year 1, 2. This is the fourth season. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
220,000. And why? It's because I figured out what advertising is all about. You never advertise the product. You advertise the feeling, the features and the benefits, and the more emotion you can get into it. Like, I knew every little kid reading Surfer magazine would die to be walking to Trestles with Mike Parsons and Ted Robinson. Like they wanted to be in that photo. Now, here's the interesting thing. The first 2 years of ads, right, the Ugg boot, here's a page, and the Ugg boots were about that big, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I ran Mike and Ted, the photo was that big. The Ugg boots were like almost invisible, right? So I wasn't selling the product. I was selling the hey, you can be with Mike and Ted if you buy a pair of Ugg boots, And that formula worked to, I got it really big in surfing, and that spilled over into snowboarding and skiing. And eventually, years later, I'm trying to figure out, shit, nobody in the Midwest is buying these. Nobody in back East is buying these. And, well, what do the kids do? Oh, my God, they play hockey in a rink, and their mom has to drive them to the rink, and the moms sit there, they're freezing in 40 degrees. And so they're buying them for the boys, but then they realize, shit, these are great boots. I'm going to get some from my daughters. So that was the beginning of women getting into it, and the story now is like predominantly women, but it really took all of that thinking and then using that process of getting the cool young kids into being cool, and then it sort of boiled over from there. So that was a huge learning experience, that if you develop a piece of software that saves time, when you advertise it, you don't advertise a photo of the software. You pick some guy in the Bahamas drinking some rum drink,
right? Feet up on a desk,
with all the time he's saving because of your product, right?
Yeah.
So you almost have to back into what the hell do I want my customers to feel, and if you can nail that, you're going to have success in sales.
Yeah, I had a similar experience as a kid. I was really into skateboarding. Wasn't very good, but I was into it. And I remember the feeling of seeing like Steve Caballero and all these awesome skateboarders skating. I didn't even realize it was an advertisement.
Right.
I was just so engaged with the photo and like how they had like the old fisheye lens.
Yeah.
And it really took me there.
Subliminally, you knew what shoes they wore and what shorts they were wearing and whose t-shirt they had. They're all branding issues. Yeah.
And it's good too that there are such awesome ambassadors to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So did all the sleepless nights end at year 4?
No, it became a different set of problems, as it built and built and built to about $1 million. And, that first $20,000 we had, we ended up having to buy them back, pay them back with a little profit and get a bigger investor in, and then we had to buy them out with some profit and then get a bigger investor. So when we're doing about $3.5 million in sales with that investor growth, I finally got a new group in. It was 3 guys out of Anaheim, Neil, Paul, and Joe. And I was going to be, it was split 4 ways, 25% each, and they were going to do all the warehousing, all the shipping, all the accounting and everything. So that was a great deal for me at the time. But there was 2 provisos. One, I didn't get my 25% stock issued until I settled this little trademark lawsuit that I was in with another company called UGHS, which I knew I'd win. So it was a safe deal. And the other thing was that I was now 100% out on the road working, and by now I'm like Mr. Ugg. I was a sales guru. I loved selling Uggs, right? It wasn't even selling. I would drop in all my retailers, and they're all now my friends. We'd play golf, we'd surf together, and so it was always a really happy thing to walk into a surf shop, and so I went out on the road and. I got back after before that, I had a real shocker. The very first, when I moved the warehouse, all the inventory up to Anaheim, and I sorted out all of the styles, colors, everything, so they knew how to do it. I gave them the fundamental rundown on the accounting system and the order system and everything. And so that took a week or so, and then I decided to go, okay, I'm going back on the road. So I went down to, from Anaheim, I went down Huntington Boulevard to Huntington Surf and Sport, and Kevin there was one of my buddies. And I walked in and the first thing he said was, "Hey, Brian, I heard you sold the business." I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I called an order in this morning and they said you don't own the business anymore." I said, "You're kidding me." They said that.
Wow.
And I was in shock. I finished up with him and I went straight across to the Shell gas station next door because this is before cell phones,
Right.
And I called up Anaheim and I go, "Neil, what the hell are you telling people?" He says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You're telling them I've sold the business." He said, "Well, yeah, you have." I said, "No, I haven't. You're my 3 new partners."
Yeah.
He goes, "No, if you look at the contract, you don't get your stuff." And I just hung up the phone and I drove back to San Diego. And I pulled out the contract and I read it and I reread it and I went, "Oh, fuck, I don't own the company anymore."
Wow.
And I just went into this massive depression and I didn't go out and I didn't speak to anybody for 3 days except my wife, and I couldn't even get a cohesive thought together. And I remember on the 3rd or 4th night, I was lying on my back on the floor watching the TV. And the show finished and I picked up the clicker and I turned it off and I rolled over onto my stomach and got up on my hands and knees and I started crawling to the bedroom. And my wife just looked at me. She's a real quiet person, right?
Yeah.
She just looked at me and says, "You get up now and walk to bed like a man." Scared the shit out of me, you know. But as I came off the floor, you know, I sort of came out of this fog and went, oh shit, there's so much more to life than this crappy little sheepskin company, you know. And that night I slept like a baby. And so the next morning I'm back to being Brian Smith, Mr. Positive again.
Yep.
And I started meditating and I started thinking, you know, what the hell can I do? You know, was it, you know, sales like retail, you know, real estate, no, business broker, maybe, accountant, never, you know. And then I got this massive dose of goosebumps again because I thought sales, you know, I've fallen in love with sales. And then I thought, what can I sell? And that's when the goosebumps hit. So I'm going to sort of segue there and talk about goosebumps, right? Because
let's do it. Yeah.
You've had them, right?
Oh God, yeah.
You get them. Everybody in the world gets them. And here's my take on goosebumps, you know. God isn't way out there at the end of the universe somewhere, you know. There's a fragment of God in every single one of us. And it has a mission for us in life. And I've just come to think every time we make a decision that is propelling us forward in their direction, it tells us, and the only way I can relate to us is through this electrochemical system called a body, right? And so these goosebumps appear. And so I want to challenge everyone listening now or watching that the next time you get goosebumps, stop and just think, what just happened? You know, what did I think? What did I just do? Yeah. And I'll bet you anything that it's something that's pretty monumental in the direction of your life, you know?
Yeah, it's for me personally, it's always been a great indicator. It makes me like, just take note of what's happening.
Yeah, well, I'm just explaining my version of where I think that comes from. And it's this universal knowledge that says, yep, you're on the right track. So why did I get the goosebumps? I said, Ugg boots, man. So I you know, called up Anaheim and I said, listen, I may never own the company, but I'm on a mission to get Ugg boots on everybody in America. So I went back up there and ate humble pie, you know, and I went back out on the road. And the first month I got back and Neil calls me aside. He said, hey, this is for you. And I opened up a check for $5,000 and that was my commissions. And it was the first money I'd ever pulled out of the business, right?
Oh, wow.
5 years it took. First money I ever took out. And then the next month I came back and I got a check for $10,000. And the next month I got another check for $10,000. And I couldn't believe that I'm out on the road with my buddies having a great time and I'm making money for the first time, you know, since I started the business. And that led me to another piece of philosophy. And by the way, this book is full of philosophy, right? It's not just a business book. It's a book about life, you know? And one of the statements is that nearly always your most disappointing disappointments will become your greatest blessings. Nearly always your most disappointing disappointments will become your greatest blessings. And I've asked an audience like the Inc. 5000 audience, like 2,500 people, you know, put up your hands if sometime in the last year you've had something that happened to you or your business, personal business, which at the time you thought was a great disaster, and now you thank God that happened because of where it's grown to. And I'd say 2/3 to 3/4 always put their hand up, right? Yeah. So that's just a piece of philosophy that I've come to realize has great truth to it.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is if you allow it to.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the key indicator.
Yeah, well, that's that. Like
Surrender.
I used to, you know, get really pissed off if something bad happened. And I got in the habit of just going, shit, that's good.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. I do the same thing. That's beautiful.
Now, what's good about it? And that sets you, instead of this negative, oh, poor me, why the universe is so unfair, what happened to me? Instead of being negative, you turn it positive, and it's like, okay, what can I do? And bit by bit, things start to fall in place. And you know, give it a week or a month, you'll have something in place that's even way better than what you were doing. Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah, it may not like resolve you the current discomfort that you're in.
Yeah.
But if you have enough belief in yourself that you'll be able to take it apart and rebuild it something beautiful, then that's probably what's going to happen.
It will all the time.
That's great. So from the sales, you're going from the 5,000, the 10,000, and the $20,000 months.
Yeah.
Did they keep on going? How did that resolve?
It took on a real steady growth, and I'm going to sort of take two forks to answer to that. Cool. Right?
Yeah.
The first fork is that every company has to go through this process of starting out insignificant, and there's a great piece of philosophy around that, and I call it the Tadpole Principle, right? And the quickest way for a tadpole to become a frog is just to live every day happily as a tadpole, right? And there's going to be every one of your viewers thinking, what the hell does that mean? But when I come back a year later and meet a group, you're the tadpole guy, right? It's the one thing they all remember. And it is such an incredibly true piece of philosophy. So I'll tell you a couple of stories. One was when I was starting UGG, there was another company up in Oregon. They were importing these nylon running shoes called Blue Ribbon. And they were trying to go after the running, sport. They were advertising in Runners Magazine. Yeah. They were trying to get into the college athletic departments, with their blue ribbons. And then eventually, after 4 or 5 years, they changed their name to Nike right at the same time as the sport of jogging arrived, right? And so everyone who's now, I want to be a jogger, they start researching, okay, who's the best running shoe? And because Nike had been grinding along for 5 years, getting nowhere, their ads started to come up and have significance. And so that drew Nike into, 100 million and a billion, and that story. And I'll tell you another one first. There was another company in Santa Monica importing these little kid leather dance shoes, and they were advertising in the dance magazines and all the dance studios all across the country, and they were trying to get into the high school cheerleading teams and all of that sort of shit. And then right as the sport of aerobics takes off, everyone says, God, I want these aerobic shoes. Well, who's in the market? Well, here's this company, Reebok, that's been grinding away for 5 or 6 years, getting nowhere, but trying to get it going. And then suddenly this sport takes off, and it took it with them. Now, here's the interesting thing. I recently read that book, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of founder of Nike. And would you believe that the first 5 years sales of UGG was greater than the first 5 years sales of Nike?
Really?
How staggering is that?
That's wild.
It's wild. Luckily, they had a product that worked 12 months of the year, and we were stuck in this 3 to 4 month sales cycle. So it's natural that their trajectory would go like that, and my trajectory was like this.
It would curve faster.
Yeah. So the other thing that you asked me, what was the question? Was did it keep going steadily? Okay.
Yeah.
It did to where we're about 8 to 10 million, and I'd now, I should finish off that story about the Anaheim guys because it's pretty important, right?
Yeah, please do.
How long have we got? How much longer have we got? 30 minutes?
20 minutes. 20,
okay.
As long as you want. That's the answer.
I got plenty of time because I'm full of stories. This book is just nothing but full of stories, right? And that's why it's, people think it's a page turner because it's so easy to read. But so in the next 3 or 4 years, I was now the sales rep, and we started to develop sales reps all over the country. So I was flying off to every single state to work with the reps. I earned about 1.5 million frequent flyer points, just traveling to work with reps over a couple of years. And in that couple of years, Neil, he bought Joe and Paul out. So he now owned 100% of it. And after 3 years, he said, hey, Brian, come on in. we're going to issue your stock. You finish the lawsuit. And I was like on heaven. And he said, let's, we got the real life insurance guy in, and we took life insurance policies out on each other, and we got a new company car each. And so I'm just on cloud nine, because the next Wednesday I'm going to have my 25% of the stock, right? And so we're out over the weekend. I'm out over the weekend, and now I've got a cell phone. It's got a size of a brick and a big cord from it in my car, right? The hottest, the coolest thing, And when my wife called me, and she was crying, and she said, "Oh, Brian, Neil's just died." And he'd been in a motocross race and had this massive heart attack, and they couldn't revive him, at the hospital.
Oh, no.
And so my world just like imploded. And I go, oh, shit. And I knew that his wife had never set foot she had no idea about what UGG was, right? It was just something Neil went to work for every day, And so I called her up and I said, listen, I'll come up tomorrow and I'll try and figure out what we're going to do. And because my livelihood depended on its survival, And so I told her, look, I'll work for the year for free. And I'll just keep taking commissions like normal. If, as we keep selling, I'll keep it alive. And so that began the longest year of my life, man. I started off driving up 2.5 hours every morning and back 2.5 hours every night. And that got really old. So I started getting the train up to Anaheim Monday morning and coming back Friday night. I always had a throbbing sore throat every Friday night from being run down. And so it was like the best of times and the worst of times. The best was that I'd brought on, just before Neil died, I'd brought on 2 new colors, black and charcoal, and the sales reps had all the samples out, and that was just kicking ass, So, and along with the regular colors, right?
Yeah.
So that was a really good thing. But the negative side, there was 2. One, I was in touch with my manufacturer, and he just had 3 or 4 really good years of cash flow with Neil. And I knew he was going to remember back to when I owned the company. Yeah. And it was never that, I always paid him, but I was never sure when,
Yeah.
So, so he was wary. And, I started bundling these orders up, 5,000 pairs, and I sent them down to George. And, hey, George, how's the production going? Oh, well, how are you going to pay me? Don't worry, George. I'm going to raise the money. I'm going to refinance the company. And that was the other worst part of the business, that I did a business plan and I started going around to the banks, and it's, this is a fad, even though it's been in business 10 years, this is a fad. Right. You'll never be here next year. Bank after bank after bank, because it's a fad. And the investment bankers, all they saw was nothing for 6 months, and this huge peak, October through January, and then nothing. And so they wouldn't touch it. And we were way too big for friends and family. So I had to pivot again. I'm thinking eventually, it was, June, for April, May, and June, I'm getting these thousands of pairs of orders, and I'm bundling them out, saying to George, hey, George, how's the production going? Well, I can't find the black or the charcoal skins, and I go, this bullshit, But it's now July, August, and I knew the big trade show September kicks everything off for the season, the winter season. And I didn't have any way of getting product in. And the sales are now getting 5 or 6 million pre-orders, not even counting the season, right? And so I'm thinking, shit. And I had to start thinking laterally, how do I raise money? And I thought, okay, my best retailers, they would love to see me stay in business. Well, none of them were interested, not even a bit. And then I thought, well, maybe there's a tannery who, because the tanneries provide the sheepskin, and that's their livelihood, and they would love to maybe have an access out, So I sent a business plan down to a couple of tanneries, and one of them was this Gordon Jackson from Jackson's Tannery, and he got me straight away and said, oh, Brian, this is brilliant. Come on down, So I did a big COD order to one of my good, customers. So I get the airfare and I hooded up down to Melbourne, and I met Gordon, a beautiful guy, little little hard, wiry businessman,
Yep.
And he took me all around the factories, and then we got back to his office after lunch, and on the desk I see this big wooden plaque, and it says, "I reserve the right to change my mind." Shit, what does that mean?
Oh no.
And so first day was all gung-ho. We're doing projections and colors, and can he get the colors out of his tannery, and the next morning he comes in, "Oh, Brian, this is a lot of money, man. I just can't take the risk. You're in LA, I'm here in Melbourne. It's just too big a risk, And the next day he comes in, "Don't worry, I found a guy in LA who's going to come in and look after you, and watch over the books and everything." And so we're back into projections and production schedules. And the next morning he comes in and says, "Oh, Brian, it's a family business, and we had a meeting about it, and they outvoted me, and we just can't do the financing." And so I left, on the fifth day without a deal. And I got back to the business in LA, in Anaheim, and the very first person that came in was my sales rep for Southern Cal, and she said, "Hey, Brian, there's a company out here, and they're selling UGG boots, and they're claiming they're going to put UGG out of business." I just, "Oh shit, who are they?" And she said, "Well, it's a Thunderwear, So I looked up the trade magazine, and Thunderwear, they sell, windsurfing gear, wetsuits and gloves and booties. I said, "What the hell?" I just threw it away. I said, I got bigger problems, than another competitor, So I went back to trying to figure out how to raise money, and I still didn't get it done. And now it's September, and the big trade show kicks off all of the fall sales for the ordering, for immediate sales. And I talked to my wife and said, I don't want to tell anybody we're out of business yet. I'm not giving up yet. So we agreed to go up and, put the booth up, and we put all last year's products out there because we didn't have any new stuff, And we finished setting it all up, and I thought, I wonder where those Thunderwear people are. So I got the trade show map out, and they're way back near the toilets, So I go walking over to see, and I just stopped like one booth short, and I just went, "Oh, fuck. There's all my charcoal, all the black, all the natural, all the sand, and it's all my production from George with the label Thugs on the back, which is Thunderwear and Uggs, right?"
Oh my God. What an amazing,
that's
it's
rather appropriate,
Right? Right? Oh, that is too funny.
And that's when I knew I'm out of business, right? And so I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell any of my sales force. We had 10 or 15 of the sales reps from all over the country in, and I didn't tell anybody. And I called my wife and I said, "Look, I'm just going to run the show out, and we'll call all the best customers on Monday morning and start telling them to go buy Thugs because it's all our product,
Yeah.
And we'll just regroup and see what happens." And so we got back after the trade show. We wrote $250,000 in sales in 3 days, which is an absolute record, And I knew we couldn't deliver any of it, but we packed the booth up, went back, and Sunday night the last call I made was to Gordon at the tannery, and I said, "Hey, Gordon, I really want to thank you for the help, but I just found out George has done an end run around me. He's found somebody else to distribute the boots, and I just wanted to thank you for all the help, but we're just going to close it down for the year and see what happens, And so he was sad, and we hung up. And then about 2:00 in the morning, the phone rings. He says, "Brian, it's Gordon. Screw George Bircher. I'm going to get you all the boots you need." And just
nice.
like that, with no handshake, no contract, no nothing, I sent the patterns down to him the next day. And he duplicated the patterns for all the style, the colors and sizes. And he sent them out to 4 or 5 manufacturers, and he cranked his tannery up to full production. And we never got the black or the sand or the charcoal in, but all of the other main colors, which was 80% of the business anyway. Every Friday, we'd get a delivery from customs, from the freight forwarder. Started off with 2,000 pairs the first week, and 5,000 pairs the next week, and 5,000 pairs every Friday from, September, October, November, and December. And we literally threw away $2 million worth of orders because we couldn't get enough. We were so late in starting.
Yeah.
But we finished up, at Christmas. And I remember, when Christmas Day hits, between Christmas and New Year, it's super quiet around the office because none of the retailers are wanting product or anything like that. They're all sort of refreshing as well. And between Christmas and New Year, two really weird things happened, right? One is that the insurance company called us up and they wanted to negotiate a payout, right? And we got a settlement that was just enough for me to buy Neil's widow out, 100% value plus the profits from the season. And she was like so thankful because she would have been dead without me pulling all that together. Right. So now I owned 100% of the company back. I had no money, but I owned 100% of the company. and then the other weird thing that happened is that the customs broker called me and said, "Hey, Brian, we've just screwed up. We just sent 2,000 pairs of Uggs to Thunderwear and 5,000 pairs of Thugs to you." And as much as I wanted to destroy those Thugs, I said, "Well, I need my 2,000 pairs more."
Yeah.
So I called the guy up. He was just up in San Clemente, which was real close.
Sure.
And I drove up in my van. I had his boots there, and we traded them out. And then I was driving back to San Diego, and between San Diego and Orange County, there's about a 30-mile stretch where it's the Camp Pendleton Marine Base. So there's no housing, and it's like every time I get back into that area, I go, I'm out of LA,
Yeah.
And it's really cool. I was cruising along and I was thinking, how come we couldn't keep boots in our warehouse for 24 hours? And the Thugs warehouse, which was bigger than our warehouse, was floor to ceiling full of sheepskin boots after Christmas. And it made me realize, oh my God, the loyalty of my customers was so powerful that they would rather forgo, 4 million sales at retail rather than buy somebody who they knew, because it went through the industry real fast what had happened. And so everybody just scrambled to get as many Uggs as they could, and they refused to buy the Thugs, right?
That's
and
amazing.
So that was the power. I didn't realize what I'd been building for 10 years, 12 years over all those millions of miles and visiting every single retailer that I had in the customer base. I pretty much knew every one of them and had visited their stores and all the local, California ones I was buddies with. And they were so loyal that they refused to buy the Thugs. And that's a real testament to customer service. Now we're in a different world now. Instead of personal relationships where it's clicks and websites and who's got the slickest Facebook ads and who can get, and a lot of companies will sort of just focus on the sales and filling orders, but not, I've got this one client, like I do consulting for clients who I think have a really good product or industry and I like them. And so there's one girl, she's got this lamb leather sash bag. It's, pouch in the front and back, brilliant product. It's got all the earmarks of being another Ugg, so I'm in love with that. And ever since the beginning, I've been with her about 8 years. She's been sending out a note in every bag. Hey, thank you. And then within 2 weeks after, there's a phone call follow-up. Hey, did you like your bag? How are you doing? Well, over the course of 8 or 9 years, she's got a mailing list of about 80,000 people. She's got nearly 6,000 women who are in the Sash Sisterhood. They're ones who own more than one bag.
Sash Sisterhood. I love that.
Right? And these Sash sisters are just on fire for Sash. So they're out selling and referring, and it's so powerful that, we did this, crowdfunding campaign, and we said, okay, if we hit 1 million, we're going to have a Sash bash, right? So we're inviting anyone in the Sash Sisterhood to come to San Diego, and here's where the location is, and it's a free night on us, right? Would you believe like 300 to 400 people showed up?
I actually do believe that.
Not knowing a single other person that they were going to meet. And they spent the weekend just meeting all the other Sash sisters. And now there's this whole new level of, VIPs and, all that. So the point I'm making is it is possible to reach out through the internet and develop a really solid base of customers and if you give really good customer service, the loyalty of these women is so, like right at, with the pandemic and all the other shit that's happened. Yep. These Sash sisters have saved the business. Their passion for it and the patience they've had waiting for product that's late coming, So the point is, if you own a business that's online, start working your customers because they're the source of your longevity and the source of your profitability.
Yeah, and get to know them. Get to know them the best way you can. We had this is a while ago, back when I was in New York. One of our businesses was a sip and paint company where it taught people step by step how to paint while they're in a bar or restaurant.
I love that.
I would call people and they'd be so surprised. Oh, you're the owner. I'm like, yeah, but you're the customer. You're more important right now. Like what? And I just ask them all kinds of questions and it worked so well for us. So well for us. I was very fortunate. My father was kind of the one that kind of imbued that in me, watching him do business, shaking hands and meaning it and looking someone in the eye and taking feedback. Cause as you said, that patience that someone has, cause not everything goes as planned.
That's right.
Yeah. And they can be your biggest advocate when you need it the most.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to finish answering your earlier question. Did it grow like this? Right. Sorry for that segue, but it's a good one. Right.
Yeah.
So here we are like 15 years into the business and I've now refinanced. I've got production, sales is working. The company's profitable. But we've got all these images. We got the surf image and the skate image, and we got the snowboard image, and we got the hockey image. And I'm going, shit, I really want a nice cohesive brand image that I can promote, all across America. And so I came up with the description of casual comfort, right? And I made this goal that I want to do a press release about casual comfort and get it on the front page of the style section of USA Today, right? The newspaper. And so I had money now. I spent 60 grand on this PR agency in Boston.
Good.
And we developed this press kit, which is touchy feelings, little samples of sheepskin and great photographs and the story of UGG and who all the customer base, different categories are. And we spent about a month putting all that together. And I'd made an appointment to meet with Margaret, the fashion editor at USA Today in Chicago, right? So we timed it and we worked our way, from New York. We did a couple of, press releases there and we went Philadelphia and we're practicing. All I'm doing is practicing my pitch for Margaret, right? Mm-hmm. So eventually we show up at the USA Today building in Chicago at 5 to 3. Our appointment's at 3 o'clock. We're at 5 to 3, and the receptionist told Margaret, and Margaret comes running out, going, "Oh, Brian, I'm so sorry. I've got a conference call. I got to be on at 3. I've got 5 minutes." And I just thought, oh shit, my presentation's 35, 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And so again, laterally thinking, like a good entrepreneur, right?
Uh-huh.
I just reached down into my briefcase and I pulled out this tatty old folder, like a file folder like this.
Yep,
right?
yep.
And I had all these photographs in it of all these celebrities that had, I'd kept this thing for years, right? And right from the beginning, there was Neil Young and Tom Petty and Sting and, Patrick Swayze on the set in Hollywood and the grumpy old men, in that movie.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And Brooke Shields. And then there was this one of this, Pamela Anderson on the beach with a red swimsuit in UGG boots, with a script there. And I quickly flicked by that because that's not how you wear UGGs, right?
Nope.
and I go straight to Pamela Anderson, in front of a fireplace. And Margaret goes, go back. Who is that? And she grabs this thing of Pamela Anderson out of my hand, and it was a tabloid page from a London newspaper. someone had sent me. And so she copies down the name of the newspaper and the name of the photographer. And she said, do you have a press kit? And I said, yep. She says, got to go. Like 4 minutes, right?
Wow.
And I just looked at the girl next to me from the PR agency, and I just said, we just blew 60 grand, you know? And so the next morning I'm on the way back to California, and I'm in Chicago O'Hare Airport, and I got my coffee and I got USA Today, and I'm expecting nothing's going to happen overnight, right? So I go through the main page and read all that, and I get to the money section and I read that, and I turn the page, and there in the front of the lifestyle section is a photo of Pamela Anderson. Now I'm choking up because this was so incredible.
Oh yeah.
And the little blurb underneath, but the next inside page was nothing except UGG and the sheepskin industry, the shearling, the history of sheepskin, how sheepskin plays into fashion. She listed all my competitors, which really, really pissed me off. But there's a better ending to that story, right? And when I got back into the office that afternoon in California, I found out that the phones had not stopped ringing from customers wanting to know where's a retailer in my area from all over the country, and retailers from all over the country saying, shit, how do I stock these UGG boots? Everyone's calling me to buy them, you know? And so that took the trajectory into the real beginning of the upstage. So I'm going to go back to the customer thing, right? I was so pissed off, and I'd done all this work, all this creativity. None of them would have ever thought of doing this marketing campaign. But what happened, there were certain big retailers that I hadn't got into yet, like Nordstrom and, you know, Kinney and Tom McCann. You know, they'd nibbled, but they'd never bought in. And suddenly they're all calling me, Brian, we need to see you. You know, we'll be in the office, you know. And so I went up and they started placing these huge orders, and they told me, you know, when you are just an item, we can't take a risk on an item, you know, but now you're a category and you are the leader of the category. And so that's why we want you. Remember Nike and Reebok? You know, they were the leaders of that category when the situation turned. Well, now I've got the whole America turning, and they want the leaders. So that just sucked us into the hundreds of thousands and increasing the millions, you know. And so there was another thing that coincided right on the tail end of that. And this was just the year I was selling the company. I'd already met the guy that I wanted to sell to. It was a public company. And during this year, I had a call from this girl in England. Her name was Trudy. And she was like a pain in the ass customer, because we had to get every Christmas was 20 pairs, 20 different mailing addresses, 20 different customs forms. It was just right when we were the busiest, you know. But we kept doing it because it was Trudy Styler, who's the wife of Sting, right?
Oh,
and we wanted to be part of that whole celebrity thing, you know. And so anyway, during this year, she called me and said, Brian, I need the most perfect pair of size 8 tall sand boots. You know, I've just been to a seminar. It's changed my world, and I want the best gift in the world. You know, she said, do you have a pen? I want to tell you where to send it. So I said, yeah, I'm ready. So she goes, Oprah, care of Oprah Winfrey, Chicago, right? So we sent the boots out, and immediately we got an order for like 20 more pairs for the staff, you know. And then that began the dance, you know, between me and the Oprah group, because after I sold the company that year, I stayed on as a consultant, and one of the main things I did was to shepherd this Oprah connection, because you know, she was savvy, she couldn't publicize it, knowing that we couldn't fulfill the orders. So it took, and if it had been with me, I could never have financed it, but because Decker's now, you know, there was a public company, they were able to finance it. I worked this out. So we got it to where a year or two later that we were on the best picks for Christmas and Oprah's favorite things, and like 20 minutes of nothing. But this is when Oprah was at her absolute peak, right? 20 minutes of nothing but Ugg boots. The elves are running around in Ugg boots, and the whole, all the audience is getting Ugg boots, and I mean,
wild.
you could not have paid for that amount of publicity, right?
Yeah.
And that then, after I saw the company, and that's what rocketed Ugg. That was like a societal shift for Ugg, and they went into the hundreds of millions and eventually the billions. So there's a huge amount of luck involved. There was luck involved with Margaret in Chicago, just lateral thinking,
Yeah.
Who would have ever thought that? And then there's connections to Oprah, but those situations only happen when you work your ass off for 10 or 15 years.
Right.
Right. So it's and I've got these 4 mantras, I you don't have to write them down, but maybe you can post this on your show notes, because
for sure, absolutely.
This is a philosophy that I read this 25 years ago, and I typed it out and put it on the inside of my daily planner, right? So all the time I open up my planner, I remember that. But here's the 4 mantras, right? Feast upon uncertainty, fatten upon disappointment, invigorate in the presence of difficulties, and enthuse over apparent defeat, right? And those, if you look at the first word of each 4, it's so positive, and the last word's so negative.
Yeah.
But this mantra is the click that shifts you from one side to the other. And defeat, it says enthuse over apparent defeat, because defeat is not a real thing until the second you give up.
Right. It's an option.
You're never look at me at that trade show, I was not going to admit defeat. I was going to hang in there, and and when I thought I was defeated, I wasn't, right?
Many times it seems.
You just got to hang in there and keep going. And those 4 mantras are just so powerful. And that, that's another part of my book. I've got all this shit in my book because it's just it's a fountain of wisdom for everybody.
So it seems that it like the product is fantastic. Yeah. But Brian, like your mind and your attitude, it couldn't exist without that.
Well, maybe somebody else might have done it, but I just happened to be,
but you did.
I just happened to be the guy that had the aha on Malibu Beach, with cold feet,
Yeah.
So it's the universe has a funny way, I swear. And I think that out of this process of, I ran the company and owned it for 18 years. And the shit that happened, the lawsuits, the customers that didn't pay, it was just plotting. But looking back, I got a lesson out of every single disaster. I got a lesson.
Yeah.
And I think that was the universe's way of saying, oh, okay, let's test this guy, man. And let's make him discover Ugg boots. And it's a joke. The whole universe is a joke, But that was my path, and I'm so blessed that it fell in my lap. But I've had a lot of businesses since. Here's another thing. We were talking about this earlier. We get this identity crisis, right? Who the hell am I? Yeah. And especially when you mentioned selling your business and having no aim. I sold Ugg, and for ages I had no aim, but I ended up starting a business in the concrete and steel industry. And I ran that up, and that one got wiped out during the 2009 recession. The construction stopped worldwide. So I lost, a huge fortune in that, and I was aimless again. And luckily, I thought, now'd be a good time to write a book about Ugg, and that was literally the situation.
That's so good.
How your greatest disappointments become your greatest blessing. That led me to this. This led me to speaking on stage. And so for the last 10 or 12 years, I've had this fabulous career speaking to entrepreneurs all over the world. And so if any of you watchers or listeners are seeing this, I love speaking to entrepreneurial groups, just like I met you at the Maverick conference. I spoke there, and that led to this. And I love speaking. So if any of you out there are looking for a really great keynote talk, and inspirational and funny, and I can really do something for you, so contact me through the website, which we'll mention later.
Yeah, we'll put all the information in the show notes, and I can contest. It's a great show too. You have a nice presence that goes along with the story.
Thanks. Yeah. And I love it. So, I love entrepreneurs. And so, that really was like another chapter. I had to come through, okay, who am I? I used to be Mr. Ugg, and then I finally realized I'm always going to be Mr. Ugg, right? Yeah. But now I'm Mr. Concrete and Steel, and then I lost that. And then it's like speaker. Okay, now I'm Brian Smith Ugg again, and then, the recession, the pandemic came in. I had 50, 60,000 worth of bookings for 2 or 3 months, wiped out, gone.
Yeah.
And so now it's like, okay, who am I again? And so we're all at the time into trying to figure out who I am. And if you ever get stuck in that moment, you can be anything you want. It's what do I want to start next? When you were at 5 years old, you were totally in control of your life. You knew who you were.
Yeah.
You knew who all your friends were at school, preschool or whatever. And then when you're 10 and you're 15, you start to lose who you are because of pressure of teachers and society and parents and shit. You start to lose it. 25, it's like, fuck, no one told you when to run. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then 30, you start to develop a different, impression of who you are, especially if you get married. Now you're a dad, and that's important. And then 40s, you're trying to build up a nest egg to retire on. At 50, so who you are is always changing, and you got to embrace that and look forward to the next iteration, because you got this spark inside. It knows. You just got to go in and meditate and ask, and eventually you'll just figure that out.
Yeah, what I usually tell people is surrender to who you really are.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because that's what I had to do. Once I gave up the fight of not being that person because of who other people thought I was, or at least who I thought other people thought I was. Right? That's when that's when it all became clear, is when I just surrendered. I might just be me. Yeah. So Brian, I love listening to your stories. This is such a fantastic opportunity that we had to sit with you, and thank you so much for being here. I know my listeners are going to appreciate it. I got to tell you, there was a couple of question marks in my business that kind of towards the end, it really became an aha moment. Some of the things you were saying in another business that I have, on how I have to handle it and how I have to look at things. So maybe it's the universe conspiring for me.
Yeah, it is, man.
Right there.
The roadmap for entrepreneurs. Yeah. Well, we both come a long way since we met at Maverick.
True story. Story.
I'm really pleased to see you doing so well.
Yeah. Same. And I hope we get to see each other actually in person again sometime soon. Yeah. You're down in San Diego?
Yeah. Still here.
Cool. I will let you know next time I'm there.
Sounds good, buddy. Well, thanks. Goodbye, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this, and for sure, contact me if you're looking for a speaker or that's it. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, it's perfect. All right, brother. Thank you so much.
See you, Tim.
Thank you again for joining us. And if you like what we're doing with the entrepreneurial hierarchy of needs and want to show your support, the best way to show some love is to subscribe and leave us an honest review. We also have a Facebook group where we continue these types of conversations and so much more for all of our continued growth. I can't wait to see you in there.